This is Robert Murtolacci, the Mindshare Learning Report, Canada's learning and technology e-magazine, and welcome to This Week in Canadian EdTech. I'm honored to have join me for a Mindshare Learning Moment, Dr. Michael Fullan, Professor Emeritus at OISE, University of Toronto, co-director of New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, and an MC at our Canadian EdTech Summit happening November 2nd and 3rd in Ottawa in partnership with the Ottawa Catholic District School Board. And today we're talking about Dr. Fullan's new book that he has introduced, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. The drivers is the transforming learning for students, schools, and systems. Thank you for joining me, Michael.
Well, it's timely. It's fantastic, actually. I'm glad to catch up with you at this particular time as we head into 2024. It's really different, as you know.
Absolutely. A little bit about Dr. Fullan. He's the author of multiple books, and he's a recipient of the Order of Canada. He's former dean at OISE and has served on the Premier's Special Policy Advisory for some decade in the past. And he's won numerous awards and is a great contributor to thought leadership globally um, in his work when it comes to leadership and transformation in education. Some of his latest books, Spirit Work and the Science of Collaboration, Principle 2.0 and the Drivers, and again, the latest book, Transforming Learning for Students, uh, uh, the new book, The Drivers: Transforming Learning for Students, Schools, and Systems. It's a tongue twister for me today. Um, so, congratulations, Dr. Fullan. Talk to me about the inspiration on this book.
Well, these books all come from being close to practice, at least since the time I worked with Dalton McGuinty, which was 2003. Kind of my career was before 2003, I was kind of an academic. And from 2003, I'm a practitioner. So that's my career in a nutshell. And being a practitioner means that you learn from the best practice, you try to influence it. And every one of my books is a feed forward. It's this is what we've learned, and this is where the implications are. So, given your event in Ottawa, November 2nd and
Correct.
3rd, one of the five case studies in the driver's book is Ottawa Catholic School Board. So it's a substantial case study. It represents a lot of the future happening now. And that's where I learn. I add to it with my own language, my own interpretation, but it's a close affinity between theory and practice.
Brilliant. You're known for the notion of deep learning. Talk to me about that notion and the importance and scaling and the equity piece that you are instrumental in helping achieve in Ottawa Catholic. That's one of the reasons we selected them as school district of the year for all the wonderful work that you've done with them in reaching every school and every student.
Yeah, sure. I mean, deep learning, I'll define it in a moment, but think of it this way. Public schooling started 200 years ago, and then we get into the 20th century, and I'm now thinking when I went to St. Mike's High School in 1950s, that we went to school. Those of us who could get university, that was a striving point. It was pretty straightforward, and I want to put it this way: is that after 1980, I won't pin. You can take a couple of years on either side of that. The educational system started to be less relevant for more people.
Mhm.
So we've got 50 years now, 1980 to the present, where the school system got less and less and less and less and less relevant. So we are in crisis mode now, magnified by
Mhm.
COVID, but it really has been a history of deterioration since 1980.
And so, coming out of COVID, as you alluded to, crisis when it comes to the state of well-being, as an example.
Yeah.
How was your book addressing that piece?
Well, up until recently, the word the notion of well-being was hardly ever mentioned when it came to learning. I'm thinking, I go back to now the McGinty decade, where we did great work on literacy, numeracy, high school graduation. Nobody talked about well-being. And then sometimes they talked about, well, if you're well-being, you're better off to learn academically. The whole thing was focused on academic. And then it became clear, the decades after, especially this century, the last 23 years, this century, it became clear that people, kids especially, but everybody, they're not doing too well mentally. The mental ill health, the uh, the deterioration of the well-being, all of a sudden it became relevant to talk about it because it was so prevalent. And I think when it got in there first, and now I want to redefine it with you, when it got in there first,
Right.
oh, we need well-being in order to get better learning. That was the introduction. Now I'm saying we need well-being in order to survive as a species. So all of a sudden, well-being has leapfrogged learning as the issue. But now, if you don't fold in learning, you don't get the capacity to ward off destruction, which is it's very we can now talk in real terms that this society may not survive the future of humankind. I mean, it's that serious. People will talk that way. So I think it really is. It's a great time for change because it's needed, but it's also a scary time. And we've got my first driver of the four is well-being and learning.
Right.
So I want well-being to be there as
Right.
a feature, but the learning part is gets us into the deep learning, which for us are the six C's: compassion and character is one C, and then citizenship, and then the other four that you've been studying for a couple of decades as well, the 21st century skills. So now all of a
Right.
sudden we've got a partnership that's required in order for us to survive.
And ultimately, the goal is to help students be prepared to live and thrive in a complex world around them. And what's the vision around that aspect? So the well-being piece
Mhm.
and real world, hands-on learning, empowering sustainable, uh, empowering innovation, sustainable learning environments is the theme of our summit. So I think we're
Right.
very much aligned with trying to give the students a real world experience and
Yeah, and I
prepare
think
them to be resilient and optimistic and problem solvers.
yeah, we have, I think there's a really interesting new convergence here. I want to spell it out. So,
Sure.
yes, when we saw the ill-being being a problem, when we saw the students were bored with regular testing and all of that, we need a new kind of learning and deep learning, and we've got the six C's. And then we started to realize, I think, that that this was different. This was not, I want to say it this way: students are not all that interested in pure academics. They're not, this doesn't what turns them on. The society is wrecked. They need to do something else. So what became very clear, and I want to say it this way because this is our deep learning goal these days. These days, it's to transform the system in order to cultivate the learning of systems who become good in society and good for society. So the good in society is coping. I'm a complex society. I'm a student. I've got to figure this out. So that's good, good in society. But now we see students as change makers. They want to be that. So there's not only good for themselves as individuals, they better be good for society, or we're dead in the water. So this is exciting because it's those two things feeding each other. The vast majority of students, I would say, the majority of students want to do this. We just don't have the school system that's amenable to that. Incidentally, Ottawa Catholic District is very clearly that type of district.
Fascinating. Now, school leadership, district leadership. There's been a huge transformation in leadership, almost a vacuum, if you will, over the last 2 3 years. I know in the U.S., I think it was mentioned 70% turnover in superintendents.
Mhm.
I don't know that it's that high in Canada, but it all starts at the top with the vision and the journey to transformation and deep learning didn't happen overnight in Ottawa Catholic, as an example. Where are we at with our leadership transformation, and how important is that in your equation?
This is very important, but it takes on a different lineage, I guess I will say, and it's fairly clear to us. In our system work, it's in the driver's book. I have flipped the system upside down, and I've said, if you want to change the system,
Interesting.
if you want to change the system, build the base, which is the local principals, teachers, schools. Build the middle, which is the district, and then the phrase I use now is intrigue the top, which is really kind of inviting. But I don't want the top to run the system because they've done a lousy job and they don't know enough. So Ottawa is a perfect example. I've
Hmm.
worked with Ottawa for now four superintendents, four directors of education,
Right.
way back
You've
in.
outlasted four of them. That's
Well, yeah,
impressive.
I've lasted longer than most of them. But the first one was Jamie McCracken. You might know him
I
from
remember Jamie.
before. So now we have Tom D'Amico, and they have learned this. And if you look at Tom and you hear him talk about leadership, he will tell you almost all of his good ideas come from the school and the community. So he's cultivating, pulling out the um, the ideas from the system, and the leadership implications are those leaders in the system that are not doing what he tells them to do. He's enabled them to do it. So this is very sophisticated to get this right, because you have to get results for the board, for society, for the parents,
Right.
all of that. And I must say, and we again, I want to say, we have the case study in the book called "The Drivers of Ottawa," and he runs or develops it. He has cultivated leadership by making the leadership at the local school level the driver, but he enables it, he fosters it, he cultivates it.
I'm so pleased that you're going to be with us in Ottawa uh, and leading the conference as an MC, and helping kind of curate the conversation around design thinking, around deep learning. Because we've been talking about beyond pockets of innovation for decades,
Yeah,
and it's a you've got a recipe for success, and it's bringing the, the, the leaders together. And not only leaders, I mean, we're appealing for our summit from superintendents or policy folks at the provincial level right down to classroom teacher, because that ecosystem is integral to achieve change, and including students.
right.
Right? We want students at the table. And talk to me about the importance of giving students agency. We have co-op students, interns here throughout the year in our co-working space, and some of them are have more skills and are ready to go full-time work. They don't need to go to college or they have the essential skills to do the job. But the
Yeah.
parents would be upset if we hired them.
Right. Yeah. Well, the students, this is a good way to break through the model, because I don't like the student voice, student agency. That seems rather kind of patronizing to me, mostly.
Okay.
And these students, because we're now have interviewed them in their center part of our book, that students are change makers, and they do want to team up with adults. They do want to see change, but all they have in the present system are a few pockets of invitation, which don't amount to me as transforming the system. So don't think of students as change agents. Think of the needs to transform the system. And once you do that, you better put students as major players. You can't just invite them as an action part. Students always will detect when they're being patronized, and they can be patronized in very, very harmless ways, where they're saying, "Oh, yeah, we want student voice, etc." And they get there on the stage, they don't feel like they're treated as central to, we better solve this problem. They don't feel that way. So it takes and Tom D'Amico, I think Ottawa now has that
Mhm.
after 6 years. They have, and let's, at the conference we have with you, let's pull that out. How are students becoming prominent beyond the adults? And they do want to do want to I'd say partner with adults, but it's a very real sense. Students are the ones that have been they in this century, they've their entire lives they've been born into technology since 2000. All the 20-year-olds, 15-year-olds, the only thing they've known is technology. And now they know way more than the adults. They need the adults to transform the system, but we better treat them as the upper hand part of the partnership, not just as, well, we better incorporate them because it's a good thing to do. It's way more
Well,
than that.
well said. Fascinating. So here at our workspace, we had students one weekend come in. Innovire is a not-for-profit, and a grade 10 student had 30 kids here teaching them sustainable electricity. And then they were building these little scale models of, with motors and windmills. And they had some of their elementary siblings with them. And then they brought in the CEO of the Canadian Space Mining Corporation as a guest speaker,
Yeah.
which they found on LinkedIn, who is going to speak at our event, and and these kids took their matter into their own hands. They managed their own learning, and I was just so fascinated by the fact that they took the initiative to do this. How do we keep up? How does the systems keep up agile curriculum development, if you will, to meet the needs of these emerging students that are learning STEM and coding in kindergarten now to grade 12?
Well, we can, and that's why I'm saying don't contain them. You can't
Right,
contain them for one thing, but don't even contain them. I think where the students are need some further development, because we all do, is in I'm going to say you can see the technology, you can see the strength, you can see the
right,
limitless possibilities. But what about empathy? What about solving the world's problems? What about social justice? What about equity? They all
right,
actually, a lot of them have opinions about that, but that's not necessarily the school system hasn't given them an outlet. And one of the districts that we work with is Anaheim Union High School
right.
District. It's in California, of course. It's in the book as a case study. And what they've done is they said, our goal is to produce civic minded students. That's our goal, and this is
Amazing.
how we're going to do it. They will have to be good academically, but they have to be good civic minded students for the problems that we're faced. And read the case in the book, because what that does is they've done it systematically. They've tied it into that. And the best empathetic leaders of the future are these students who are immersed in technology, but they're also immersed in humanity, because humanity is the most vulnerable. If you think of artificial intelligence, fantastic and
Right.
powerful. We like it. We like it because it's a disturbance in a good way. But if we don't use technology for humanity, we will be further in the deep hole to extinction.
Absolutely. So inspiring the next generation, solving big problems in space and on Earth is the theme of the first keynote at our summit.
That's great. That should be the way. And I think the students will benefit individually by being change makers individually. They'll have a better life. They'll have made a big contribution. But at the same time, equally, they will be realizing we are saving the future. That's the marriage right now. It's so clear that it needs to happen.
I was just at a meeting today where we were talking about the UN sustainability goals, and how the runway we have on this earth may not necessarily. One of my colleagues, his brother is a scientist, said, we may have 150 years. We may not have more than that if we keep up at this rate. So I think the kids are being the agents of change, as you alluded to, that want to make an impact. And UN sustainability goals are very timely, I believe, in solving real world problems.
Yeah, when they first came out, the sustainability goals, they were like attractive for the next 50 years. Yeah, we better work on those. Now, as you implied, they're a necessity for the next 5 years. And when you say that we may, and your friends or the analysts say we may not last more than 150 years, well, we can say, okay, we're going to be dead by then, all of us. So 150 years, too bad. Goodbye, humanity. And that could happen. And And I don't see where there's any major reason why that will be prevented. I mean, the emotions we're talking about now are in that direction, but until people say, like, why would they want to do that? Do they want to save the generation 150 years from now where they won't be alive? The answer probably is yes. They want to make a real contribution, but that doesn't have the emotional energy, the
Hmm.
social energy. It doesn't have the social energy as the denouement 150 years from now. That'll be absolutely disastrous.
So, so in order to get see a sea change across the country,
Yeah.
you appealing to the emotional change in leadership and mindset to see whole system changes. How does that? It doesn't happen overnight. You've achieved it in Ottawa.
Hmm.
Our summit has great potential to make an impact nationally, and that's, we've talked about themes of beyond pockets of innovation that wanted to do away with that because it was so cliche, but it's
Hmm.
really about empowering innovative and sustainable learning
Yeah.
environments for the future that encompasses your drivers.
Yeah. I think it's to us, it's a go slow to go fast proposition.
Hmm.
So it doesn't happen overnight, but if you start the momentum, and then you've got mechanisms like our four drivers, which are our four drivers, incidentally, are well-being and learning, social and artificial intelligence, equality and equity, and what we call systemness. How do you get the whole system going? Once it starts, it's like a locomotive. It starts slow, and then it's got the interactive power of the drivers. It could accelerate in second phase 10 years later and go fast, fast, fast. That's our only hope.
Amazing. So you're embracing AI
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Yep.
and tech infused pedagogy. Talk to me about your perspective and how that's evolved.
Well, the on the tech side, just take the one instrumental. We haven't done a very good job of assessing on an ongoing basis progress around the six C's. So again, I go to Anaheim. We're working with a technology company where they're in real time with students and teachers, able to show today how the six C's are formulating for each and every student in this whole system. So I think technology has to be part of that ongoing stuff. But on the learning side, and all of us are trying to catch up with artificial intelligence. And I've recently been part of writing an editorial there. It's in our book, and we all
Mhm.
say two things, or at least I'm going to say two things. One is it's unpredictable. Let's face it, we don't know where it's going to go. So let's start there. Number two, it can be harnessed if you start to think about what would be its use. For example, how would you use it to free up teachers to do more interactive teaching and learning with students? There's a lot of reasons why you can do that. You can see it in there. So I think we have to be proactive with artificial intelligence. We have to be also careful about the misuse of it. We all know, for example, that artificial technologies misdiagnoses Black people as
Mhm.
misreads who they are and gets them in courts with all based on artificial intelligence, none of it on real human judgment, and it's always wrong, nearly always. So there's a mess in there, but the power of artificial intelligence, if put to good use, I think could be a game changer, and that's what we should concentrate on. Fight off the bad uses of it, build up the
Mhm.
good uses of it, have it carry the day for humanity.
Well, it certainly is one of the most pivotal times in the history of education since the Industrial Revolution and the industrial model that emerged in education some 200 years ago or so. AI
Yeah.
has great promise and potential. In combination with the new book, The Drivers, I think the sky's the limit here, I have
Yeah,
to
I just
say.
wait. One final thing about it
Sure.
is 200 years ago, 150 years ago, all these things were happening, good things. We were always humans, passive receivers of what was happening in society. I when I think of the Industrial Revolution, when I think of all the unfolding of this, I think we were on the receiving end all the time. It's happening. Okay, this is good for humanity. Now is the change. Can we be in the driver's seat, possibly or not? We've never asked that question. We've never mobilized the social and political energy to be in the driver's seat. That's where we have to go next.
Exciting times for sure. As we embrace I also say we have to embrace human intelligence. We can't lose sight of who we are and empowering those people to make good decisions as well.
Yeah, the day-to-day decisions, the learners. That's it's all in there in our equation.
Well, with that, Dr. Fullan, any final thoughts to share as
No,
we
I can't
prepare?
wait for November 2nd and 3rd. That's my
Yeah,
final.
well, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you in Ottawa at the Canadian EdTech Summit, empowering innovative and sustainable learning environments in partnership with Ottawa Catholic, Ottawa U. Your buddy, Dr. Andy Hargraves, will be there as well,
Right.
and Algonquin College. So, with that, thank you again, Dr. Fullan.
My pleasure, Robert. Thank you.
That was Dr. Michael Fullan, the co director of New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, on his latest book, The Drivers Transforming Learning for Students, Schools, and Systems. My name is Robert Merlacci, the Mindshare Learning Report. Be sure to check out www.mindshare.learning to get your latest issue. And don't forget to register for the summit coming your way soon. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep the learning curve steep.